Thank you so much, Matt. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Bill and projects he has been working on. And um, Bill is a graduate of the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts. He cooked at the old Ritz-Carlton in Boston, and then worked at Harbor Sweets, the handmade chocolate company in Salem, Massachusetts. Bill started his personal chef business in September of 2001. He's the author of 4 cookbooks from Story Publishing. From 2012 until 2017, Bill appeared weekly on Mass Appeal, a daily lifestyle show on NBC Channel 22 in Springfield. In addition to being a personal chef, Bill teaches people how to cook. He does this in Zoom events and in private homes, at parties, and at team building events for companies. He consults with food businesses on recipe and menu creation. And he's currently providing free Zoom cooking classes every Wednesday and Friday evening at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. For 10 years, except when we're having a pandemic, Bill has spent a week each summer teaching culinary basics to students at the Care Center, a school for young mothers in Holyoke. This collaboration has been coordinated by Reader to Reader, the literacy nonprofit in Amherst. Bill has worked on other projects as well with students and young parents from Holyoke, Springfield, and Navajo, New Mexico. As you just learned, Bill keeps a very busy schedule and juggles a lot of projects, and also stays very involved in our local community. And this collaboration with us is another one of those occasions where he shares his passion of teaching people how to cook. I hopped online a few weeks ago and joined one of Bill's classes and learned a lot and had a lot of fun, and I encourage you to do the same. You will also find the archives of his recipes from previous classes on his website, which is a really, really wonderful resource for anybody looking for menu ideas. And you'll find everything from appetizers, sauces, to main dishes and desserts. So without further ado, thank you so much, Bill, for being here this evening, and we're ready to cook with tofu.
Well, thank you, Reka. And I just want to make sure, my wife just handed me a note just to make sure that both, I've got 2 cameras here, that both cameras are visible. And there's a question on that. So just want to make sure. So that's good. So thank you. So let's jump in. Today's recipe is one that I came up with. It's for a Bahn Mi sandwich. If you're unfamiliar with a Bahn Mi sandwich, oh, by the way, if you have any questions or comments, I was just looking at my skill here. Chat them in, and we'll ask as we go along. I'll answer them. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. But the Bahn Mi sandwich, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's very popular. It's really considered Vietnamese street food. It's kind of a combination of Southeast Asian cuisine and the French influence. So it's a sandwich. Traditionally, it's pork or chicken with some pickled vegetables served on a baguette. And so I've been making this for many years, and it dawned on me, maybe it's time to do a vegetarian and a vegan version. So today's is a vegetarian, and actually with one slight change, it can become a vegan, and I'll walk you through that part. It's the easiest thing in the world. And it's a really enjoyable sandwich. So I'm gonna be doing this in 3 parts. I'm going to show you the pickled vegetables, which is, again, it's very fast. You don't have to do this days in advance or pickle the vegetables for a week or 2, 30 minutes or less, they're going to be ready. And I'm going to show you what to do with the tofu, my preferences for tofu. I'll cook it up to give the tofu some nice flavor and a sauce. And that's going to go also quickly as well. Now, I say in the recipe that you can marinate the tofu for anywhere from an hour to a number of hours. We're not going to go that long, otherwise we'll be here till midnight, which would be fun, but not going to do that. So I'm going to do that kind of quickly, and it's still going to absorb some nice flavor. So I'm going to reverse the order just a little bit. Usually I do the tofu first. I'm going to walk you through the pickled vegetables first. Now, I say vegetables in plural. The recipe calls for going with carrots. And I was actually picking up some supplies for the class at the River Valley Co-op. And I came across some daikon radish. I love putting daikon radish in there, so I'm going to include that. It's not written in the recipe, but it really, it's a nice change, nice addition. So first of all, what I'm going to be doing is a really thin julienne, really thin slices of the carrot and the daikon radish. If you wanted, you could use a mandolin. And this is what a mandolin is. This would do very thin juliennes. Not everybody has one, and so I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have one. Also, if you're not super comfortable in your knife skills, I'll show you how to do this. One of the books that Reka mentioned knife skills, it's called knife skills, and I walk people how to do these kinds of things. First of all, I'm going to peel the carrot. And the reason I peel the carrot first is there's a trick when I first cooked at the Ritz. The executive chef was showing us this. And all my life I've been peeling carrots. I never knew this great little way to do carrots. And traditionally, it works best with a long straight edge as opposed to one of the shorter peelers, is most people either peel one way or peel towards them. And so what that says to me, there's a blade on both sides. So really all I do is keep the peeler on the carrot, and it goes quickly. And one of the reasons I really appreciated this is when I was cooking at the Ritz, new kid on the block there. So I was the rookie who they said, go peel 25 pounds of carrots. So it goes by quickly, and just a quick little back and forth. I always get a big kick out of that. So this will go into the compost. So now let me show you, and you want to have your knife sharp for this. Actually, you want to have your knife sharp all the time. So how can you really tell if your knife is sharp enough or if it needs sharpening and what to do? My way, somebody taught me this again, for about $1.79, maybe as much as $2, you can check how sharp your knife is. And this technique and this method will last you for about 3-4 years. Truly, go to your local hardware store or home supply place and buy foam insulation for pipes. And so what I do to see how my knives are doing, or if I think, gee, it's getting a little dull, I just take this and just put a little slice in it. If it goes through easily, it's sharp. And it's easier than trying to find a tomato or cut through a piece of paper. And I always keep this pieces of this, and you buy long lengths of it, keep it in a closet or a garage or a basement. And it's just, it tells you if you need to sharpen your knife. Now, here's how you get really small, thin juliennes. And let me also say that if you're uncomfortable doing that, I'll show you another way, because really what you want is a thin piece of carrot and also the daikon radish. The reason you want it thin is so it can absorb the sugar and vinegar mixture, the pickling mixture, quickly. If it's thicker, it's going to take a longer time for it to gain the flavor. Actually, let me just jump in real quickly, and I'm going to do that. It's equal parts sugar and white vinegar. And just going to whisk them together. So in this case, it's a half a cup of each, and whisk them together. Now, what you'll see in this recipe and so many other recipes is keep whisking until the sugar dissolves. That could be quickly, it could be a while. How can you tell if it's dissolved? Make sure your fingers are clean. Put your finger at the bottom. If you still feel, and you can see in this case, if you can feel the sugar granules in there, it's not dissolved yet. Now, there are two things you can do. One, it might take 5 or 10 minutes, kind of go back and keep stirring it. And it's going to dissolve over time. Or if you're really impatient, just throw it on the stove in a small saucepan, bring it to a simmer. Once it simmers, the sugar will all dissolve, and you'll be ready to go. Just cool it down. But this will, I'm going to keep going back to that, but that's underway, and we'll see once I'm done getting the vegetables that that's going to be ready to go. So now what you want to do is you don't want to try and cut long, thin slices off of the carrot. You're going to find it's going to move around. It's going to kind of be difficult, and you're not going to get the thinness that you need. So just give that a little stir. First thing you want to do with your cutting board is make sure you have a damp cloth underneath it, because that's going to keep it from moving around. That increases the chance that you can have all your fingers and thumbs at the end of the evening. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut off the ends of the carrot. And now I'm going to make life easy for me. I'm going to cut this into, I think that's going to be, I'm going to cut this into thirds. This is also a huge carrot. And so now the first thing I want to do, because this is kind of rolling around, I'm going to plant the knife at the end of the cutting board, kind of hold the knife between your thumb and forefingers like that to have full control over the knife. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one first slice. And now I've got a nice flat surface here, and the carrot's not going to roll around. And make it as thin as you can. So let me just show you that holding my fingers out like this, usually people hold the food like that, and they end up kind of slicing your fingers. Hold your fingers up like this. Plant the knife. That's why also I tell people I really do suggest getting a 10-inch chef's knife. 8-inch chef's knives aren't as efficient. You have to do a little more effort, and this is actually easier to use. It gets more chopping done and is safer to use. So first thing we're doing now, that's not going to roll around, is I'm going to cut very thin slices like this. Take your time. You're not in a rush.
A good tool makes all the difference. That's all I can say right now. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so now I'm just going to cut these out a little bit thinner. These are just the end bits here. And again, the goal is to cut the carrots, not your fingers. Just take your time, little thin strips like that. Now, I've got these longer pieces here. Just going to cut them down like that. So that's one way of doing it. And actually, I'm going to just finish cutting up the rest of this here. And again, the smaller you make it, the more it's going to absorb the liquid. So these are, I like the size of this. Now, say you're not confident in doing it this way, or they're still coming out too big, because also maybe your knife isn't sharp enough. Not a big deal. Let me just put some of these carrot pieces here. Oh, by the way, a bench scraper, the best $11 you can spend. It'll last you forever. Traditionally, it's used in pastry shops for gathering up the dough, or called a bench scraper for cleaning all the dough and stuff off the work surface. I use it all the time just to gather stuff up off the cutting board. Might go into the compost pile, might go into a bowl, might go right directly into whatever I'm cooking, the pot or the saucepan. So now, that's one way to do it. Here's another way to do it. And again, with the peeler, you're going to get nice thin pieces this way. And again, if you're just not comfortable trying to come up really thin, now these are going to be much thinner, that's fine. So if you do a bunch that way, and again, just stack them like we did before, because you can do them one at a time. It's going to take you a while. But this way, if you stack them, be like an economist and call it economies of scale. But if you stack them, then I just got 2 piles here to cut. So just like the other one, just like that. These are actually thinner than the others, but that's fine. So now I've got these very thin slices. Now let me show you another way to do it. It's all going to work out just fine. I'm going to actually cut this more into a half moon. So if I were to take the whole carrot and just cut it in half that way, so now I've got half of this. And just do really thin slices like that. Now, this would be my third of the 3 choices. This would be my third choice of it, because this has less area to absorb. This has more. So now if you wanted to even cut some of these down, you could, but I would just go with just those. I mean, if you wanted to get really thin matchsticks, you could do it that way. So you've really got so many options here. So I'm just going to move this. I think I'll put this in a bowl. And so I've got enough carrots there. So I'm just going to cut up the daikon, which I've got right here. Now, it's completely up to you. You can peel the daikon or not peel it. It's going to be fine. If you're concerned about the unsightly blemishes in the outside, you can peel that off too. Just cut the ends off. Actually, just for the sake of the look of it, I am going to peel this. Another thing I like to do when I'm peeling something like this, I always kind of start around the top. And that way it's easier just to, instead of trying to fumble at the top of it, at the edge. I've already got a head start here. Now, if you are going to use a mandolin, which I always consider mandolin to be the French word for guillotine, if you are going to use a mandolin, do I have it right here? Yes. Wear a Kevlar glove. Very common. You can buy them all over the place online. Reason being, it's so easy to cut yourself. I've been a banquet chef. I've worked in kitchens, and it's usually memos and instructions always come down from the executive chef. Make sure you wear a glove while using the mandolin. That always happens the day after somebody cuts themselves. It's so easy. They're really, really sharp. So you want to be super, super careful if you are going to use a mandolin. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the daikon that I did before. But now this way, since it's shorter, and it's also not as hard as a carrot, so it's easier to get the thin cuts that I want. And I'm just going to do it this way, that other way. And I think I'll go with one more. And by the way, you'll see this is almost all just a little bit of cloudiness in there. The sugar is almost completely dissolved, really just by sitting there, with a little bit of stirring. So that's almost ready to go. So now I'm just going to slice up the daikon. Just want to stack it. And there we go. And I think I'll do this in 3 stacks. Why not? And again, very thin matchsticks. Because again, the smaller it is, the more of the pickling flavor it'll absorb. And again, take your time. If you're not super comfortable with your knife skills, take your time. So there we have the daikon and the carrot. And I'm going to throw a little salt and pepper in here. Just a little salt, black pepper. And now I'm just going to let this set aside. And then we'll jump onto the tofu. And then let me just grab a spoon from right here. And just set this aside. The more you submerge it, then it will all be just fine there. Come on, get it all in there. There we go. And now I've got over here the tofu. I have extra firm tofu. These vary. There's not a whole lot of water that came out. Well, actually, I would say that's maybe a couple of tablespoons. Not a ton, but let me just talk about the idea of draining tofu. The whole purpose of this is to dry it out a bit. You gently press it. You don't want to really press a lot of weight on it because it's going to crumble and you're going to end up with mush, and you really don't want to do that. So, and again, most of it came out. The extra firm tofu, as a rule, is drier than the firm and the softer tofus. Now, I like to use extra firm tofu primarily because I just like the way it holds up to high heat, holds up to the structure of it. Let me take you sideways for a little bit and tell you about this cooking technique that I'm going to do. These. As Reka mentioned, I've been doing Zoom cooking classes, free ones. My wife and I have been doing them for actually last November was a year, so we've been doing them for quite a while, 2 a week. And as we went into it and I started doing some tofu dishes, I always liked my tofu dishes, but I didn't love the look. I wasn't getting the browning that I wanted. The great thing about interactive things like this is people were popping up with all kinds of suggestions on how they were doing their tofu. And as a result, I picked up two new, this technique I've been doing for about 1.5 years on the tofu, and another one I picked up just a few weeks ago at the suggestion of one of the attendees of the Zoom. So the technique I'm doing tonight is I'm browning the tofu. I'd always found that when you cube the tofu and you throw in a skillet, medium heat, high heat, somewhere in between, throw in some oil, very inconsistent browning. And I really wasn't comfortable. I didn't like the look of it. I didn't like the texture of it. I wasn't falling in love with tofu. I mean, I loved the dishes, loved everything of it, but I wanted a better look and more of a nicer mouthfeel. So one of the suggestions was don't cube it, cut it into slices, and then brown it, and it browns up really well. And I thought, well, that's kind of counterintuitive. All I'm doing is, instead of cubes, just one bigger piece. the laws of physics in tofu, it works. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut these into slices. I'm going to marinate them. I'm going to put together the marinade, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. Then you're just going to brown the tofu, cook up the marinade. Let me kind of go parallel with you with this, with the traditional banh mi sandwiches. And that is that they usually, you've got the meat, as I said, pork, chicken, or whatever, and there's some juices with it, juices that the meats were cooked in. Because usually it's simmered where the meats are. And in this case, your simmering tofu isn't going to get you a whole lot. So the way I came up with this is I went with the browning technique. I made a marinade that I like to go with this. And after these were browned, I threw the sauce in, kind of got everything all warmed and melded together, and then took them out. And so you've still got some moisture with the tofu, and you've got the extra juice to go onto the sandwich. So let me show you something. I'm going to start slicing. You don't want to slice this too thin because it's going to break apart. You don't want it too thick. So what is that in between? I would say this is somewhere in the range of about a half an inch-ish or so. You don't have to take out a ruler. Something ballparkish like that is fine. So just going to do a bunch of slices. Now, one thing I say in the directions is to cut these again on the diagonal. For the sake of time in the skillet and moving them around, I'm going to keep these whole, and then I'm going to cut them on the diagonal later. And the reason I cut them on the diagonal is I think they fit better on the baguette that way. So without the tofu hanging off. So now, first thing I'm going to do, I'll see how the skillet's doing. I'm preheating a little bit, but now I'm going to make the marinade. And again, this is a marinade that I came up with one particular ingredient that I think makes the whole dish. And I'll get to what that is as I'm putting this all together. So I'm going to start with about 1/4 of a cup. Going with tamari. It's gluten-free. You don't have to go with the tamari, go with regular soy sauce, but with so many people with the gluten issues, it's an easy way to go. So I've got 1/4 of a cup. Now, in this case, you say, well, I'm using a dry cup measure. Why not a wet cup measure? It's all close enough. The difference is negligible for what we're doing. So either way is fine. 1/4 cup in this case is 1/4 cup. I'm going to go with some rice vinegar, and I've got that right here. 3 tablespoons. And usually, but I'm not doing it in this case, very often when I am cooking with soy sauce, especially if I'm making a marinade, I dilute it almost 1-to-1 often. Even if I'm going with a lower sodium soy sauce or tamari, I dilute it, it stretches it farther, you still get the nice salty oomphiness that you're looking for. A tablespoon of agave or honey, I'm going with agave. And it's just a just natural sweetener. I'm going with some, just make sure I've got everything here, sesame oil. The recipe says toasted sesame oil. If you don't have toasted, if you have regular old sesame oil, that's fine. Now, think about going with an oil like sesame oil or a walnut oil or other nut oils like that. If you want to store them in your refrigerator, olive oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, things like that, you can store in your cabinet and they're fine. The reason you want to store these in the fridge is they'll go rancid more quickly. And nothing worse than getting ready for a recipe. You know you've got a lot there and it's gone bad. These will last much, much longer. I'm not going to say indefinitely, but these will last much, much longer in the fridge. Now, say you're getting ready, you know it's fine. You go to take it out of the fridge, but because it's been in the fridge, it's a solid little chunk. And you want it straight away. Just take some hot tap water, fill up either a quart container or a drinking glass or whatever. Put this in, put in keep the lid closed, fill it up with hot tap water, then you open it up so it can get some air circulating, and this will be usable literally in minutes. So that's one shortcut. It'll take a little frustration out, and as you're getting other ingredients, you'll be all ready to go. Got the sesame oil in there. Here is the not so secret ingredient. This is 5-spice powder, also called Chinese 5-spice powder. And to me, this has that earthy flavor that really defines so many Chinese recipes. Let me tell you a little bit about this particular one. This comes from, actually it's local, from the Southern New England Spice Company. They're out of Chicopee. And what I love about this is this 5 spice powder has 6 spices in it. And what they do differently, because almost all of them are the same, pretty much 5 spices: cinnamon, fennel, ginger, cloves, and anise, as does this one. This one has a 6 one, it's got black pepper in it. I really like the balance of this. The reason I like this one in particular, and again, your taste may vary, is so many of them, because the big oomphy flavor in here, the 2 flavors, particular one, the anise and the cloves. And often in the list of ingredients on these, cinnamon's first, then the fennel. So cinnamon gives almost an impression of sweetness. And but so many of these I've had where the anise is the first flavor, and it really hits you between the eyes, which is sometimes nice. But I like the balance for this and most of the recipes that I cook with. So I'm not urging you to check out every 5 spice powder, but this is the one I really enjoy this one.
Bill, a couple things. Thank you so much for just pausing for a moment. One is I really appreciate you sharing safe food storage tips with us, because the weather here in this area, we got hot, humid summers, and it's really important. That's very, very helpful to know about all that. And we have a participant who would like to find out if it's possible to replace the agave or honey with maple syrup.
Yes. The answer is yes. The flavor, because maple syrup, I don't do a lot of cooking with maple syrup just because it's such a strong standout flavor. However, it's not going to overpower it. It'll slightly alter a little bit, but the answer is it's going to be perfectly fine. You're going to love the flavor. Absolutely, yes, you can make that change. Now,
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. One of the ingredients that I'm putting in here is, and this is this isn't the brand, but this calls for fish sauce, traditionally in the which is a very big condiment and a cooking ingredient in Southeast Asia. My favorite, I can't get this anymore, even online, it was called vegetarian fish sauce, which I think is the best named product I've ever come across in my life. But this is one called a seasoning sauce when I couldn't get that other one anymore. And this is the one I'm using in replacement of fish sauce. Now, if I know Reka has the ingredients, but if you don't want to go with a full fish sauce, if you want to make this vegetarian and you don't have this or want to make this yourself, a lot of times you'll see recipes online for substitutions for fish sauce being just use soy sauce. You don't want to do that. You're not going to get the same. They're so completely different that's just wrong. Because the only thing they have in common is it's a dark color. So if you can't get hold of this and you don't want to use fish sauce, what I often use is a combination of 2 things: Bragg's amino acids and a umami sauce. One is a pepper sauce, but there are all kinds of different ones out there. And that gives you both a bit of a bite, some saltiness, and a bit of oomph, a bit more mouthfeel, as opposed to which soy sauce doesn't give you. So I just want to take you in that direction, again, to keep this as a vegetarian option. So, I just want to put in just 1 or 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to add that. So that's, but I think it's important if you can include that in there. Again, it gives you just this different balance of flavors in there as well. And then I'm going to be finishing up what I'm going to be cooking with olive oil, but those are all the flavors. So now, what's very often happens with Asian sauces when you're cooking, if you were to taste this right now, as I'm about to do, you might find you're going to be very disappointed because it does need the heat to bring it all together. So I haven't tasted this in quite a while. So let me see. Well, that'll catch your attention. It's fine. It's got a lot of zippy things going on in there, but you'll find that when you cook with it, it really does balance out nicely. But it does have some zippiness to it. So the tofu's already cut. I'm just going to pop it in here. And if I were marinating this for what the recommended time that I would recommend, that I do recommend in the recipe, I would do it in a shallower bowl, just to make it easier. But in this case, one great thing about tofu, it's like a sponge, so it's absorbing, as we speak. So I'm just going to pop these down here. And again, that's another advantage of going with an extra firm tofu, is I really am, I'm not being light and dainty with these, but I'm also not, being harshly handling them, and they're holding together well. Tofu, if I were to go with just a firm or certainly a soft tofu, those would just break apart. So now I'll go, rather than have those sit for 30 minutes or so, I think we're going to jump in and start cooking in a sec. But first, I need some more beverage. So up to this point, and until the very end, everything is complete. Well, everything, including the end, will be vegetarian. And I'll show you the one ingredient at the end, which go from vegetarian to vegan. But so far, everything has been vegan and will be. So I'm just going to kind of, actually, because it's kind of a shallow bowl, I like the fact that the lower ones in here are soaking in the marinade. So now, I'm about to start cooking. So I've got my skillet going. I'm going to swing the camera around in just a second. But so many recipes that you look at say that put the oil in the pan, when the oil's hot, start cooking. Well, how do you know when that is? If it's just a little skim coat of oil, if it's a lot of oil, sometimes it's hard to tell. And so one of three things can happen. One is the skillet's not ready, the oil's not ready. And so you put the food in, and if it's not hot enough, the food's just gonna absorb the oil. If it's too hot before or after you put the food in to cook, it's gonna start smoking. Or the third possibility is it's ready to go. So here's what I do. I'm going to swing the camera down a little bit here to look at my skillet. So here's what I do. I always heat the skillet without anything in it, no oil, no nothing. But I also keep water by the stove. And I do this for two reasons. One, first of all, let's see how it's doing. That's nice and hot. So that's ready to start cooking. Now, since I'm just going to be going with a skim coat of oil, when I add the oil, just a little bit, it's going to be instantly ready to go within maybe a second. So that's doing just fine. But I also keep water by the stove here, and it doesn't apply to tonight, but just as a general rule of thumb, that if I'm sauteing vegetables, whether it be onions, I'm using peppers or something like that, and the skillet's getting a little bit hot, or the saucepan, if the pan's getting a little too hot, a lot of people just throw in some oil just to kind of give it some liquid and then start moving around. I throw in water. Could be a tablespoon, could be a couple tablespoons, it could be accidentally more. That's going to do a couple of things. It's going to cool down the pan, and all the brown bits that are starting to accumulate in the bottom, almost like deglazing the pan, getting the brown bits off to make a sauce. That incorporates that stuff back right into the food, whether it be the onions or the other vegetables. And so that also cools down the pan, keeps everything moist, and gets you back in control of the temperature you want it to be. Now, say you accidentally throw in a little too much water, no big deal, it's going to evaporate. So you don't have to go panic, gee, I meant to do 2 tablespoons, I threw in 3 or 4, it's going to be fine. Just don't throw a gallon in, but it's going to be fine. So I know the pan is hot. I'm going to take my towel again, and now I'm going to do with paper. Oh, I don't have a paper towel right here. So I'm going to go with a towel, and I'm just going to dry off the tofu. Why am I drying off the tofu a little bit here? Well, I want to get the excess off, because otherwise it'll steam more than it will brown. So this gives me the opportunity to brown everything without fighting what I'm doing. Yes?
Sorry, Bill. I was going to say, I'm learning. I love all the tips and all those tips and advice are going to be so critical for our success when we do this recipe, because I've tried cooking tofu numerous times and in these slabs that you're doing. And I've always found that the heat, just like as you pointed out, is so critical, because if it's not the right temperature, then it ends up sticking to the pan, and then you just can't get it, can't get it crispy anymore. It just doesn't work. So the timing and the heat is really, really important. So
you're absolutely right. And another piece of it, and actually I'm going to put the oil in. So actually I'm using grapeseed oil because my canola oil is a little too far out of reach there. And actually there's a little more oil than I wanted, but that's fine. So And I know that's hot because I already tested the pan. We'll get the sizzle in a moment.
Do you ever use coconut oil? I'm curious.
Not often, and there's actually no reason in particular that I'm not.
Okay.
Actually, I might be able to get just about all of this done. So, and that's another thing. While you don't want to crowd your pan, let me just kind of see a little bit more there. While you don't want to crowd the pan, if you have to do this in 2 batches, that's perfectly fine. And I'm fighting the urge to crowd the pan because I'm going to have 1 slice that's not going to fit in here. And that always gets into the danger zone of bad things happen when there are witnesses. So, but I am going to do it.
We have a really great question. A participant is wondering if we can prepare this in an air fryer. Is that something that you've experimented with?
Well, I have a little bit, and the answer is likely yes. I'd have to think about the coatings for this. Let me think. Well, while that's cooking, let me kind of talk you through that. Me personally, I don't love the air fryer because I do have a convection oven, and I don't like cooking in small batches like that. And for instance, if I'm going to be doing an oven fish and chips, I would do oven fries, and I would do my fish. I would bake the fish with a bread, a little egg coating on it with some breadcrumbs on top, and I do that. And so I like having the volumes heavy and do it in stages of smaller amounts. Also, I like leftovers. So when I look at the tofu, if there is a way, I haven't tried to do tofu in an air fryer, so I'm half speculating, half working it through in my head. What I would do is I would need a coating. Here's what I would definitely marinate this for at least half an hour, go a long time, and pat it dry, and then I believe you'd want a coating of oil or whatnot on the to get its browning. Otherwise, it's just that really hot circulating air going over the marinades. You need some oil. So yes, I would do that. Yes, I think it would work. So I had to work that out in my head. But then what I also do, because the marinade is going to be a part of it, is I would just heat the marinade in a skillet or in a small saucepan and have that ready to go for drizzling over the sandwich. So yes, you could do that in an air fryer. But I also want to go sideways for a moment on 2 things. One is, and I've got it right here, is as you can see, this is not, let me drop it down. This is not a non-stick skillet. I'm not a fan of non-stick skillets for a few reasons. Even with the newer technology, you have to protect the surface from being scratched, because once the surfaces get scratched, they lose their efficacy, and in some cases they for a number of Teflon and others, it's not good if you've got birds in the home. Also, another reason I don't like nonstick skillets is you cannot now pop it into the oven at over 400 degrees. So it takes away some options for you. You can't throw under a broiler if you're making a frittata, for instance. So what I like to do is use enough oil, but especially for something like this where I'm looking for some crustiness on there, is always use a metal skillet. A metal spatula. If you use a plastic one, they're fine. It's not a matter of it's not a high enough. It can't handle the high heat. It's a bit thicker, and the plastic ones tend to rip the food as you're turning it over. But if you have something really thin, like a metal spatula, you won't have that problem. Now, I'm just reaching my drawer here because I was given a gift one time by a friend of ours, and I was kind of skeptical that it was worth that. Why would you give me that? Well, I didn't think it, but my face said that, so she thought I was unappreciative. It was the best thing I ever got. It was about a $3 gift, and it's a little cookie, metal cookie spatula, so it's perfect for small items. And if you have a very crowded pan, as this is, sometimes the big spatula might be too big. And so if you get a small spatula like this, just kind of see how it's doing. See, look at that browning. of that first one. So these are just browning beautifully. So the smaller spatula gives you that option. See, look at how nicely that's browning. I was never, it's funny, I cannot tell you the laws of physics that will tell you why a slab of tofu will brown, but look at that, but a cube will not. So I just love that look. And it's so much nicer looking than a white or an off-white piece of tofu. And one more.
That looks beautiful. Oh, wow.
Yeah. See, it's and again, I'm so grateful to people that come to my Zooms and they just kind of say, how about this? How about that? And so we talk through, just as we talk through some of the things you're asking, like the air fryer. So when one of them came, a couple of them mentioned this, I thought, again, that makes no sense, but I'll try it and it works. So I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit. And then what I'm going to do now, once that's done, I am going to throw the sauce on. In fact, cook the sauce real quickly and then have a bubble and take it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out in separate, do it separately. I'm going to take the tofu out and let it sit there. I just want to grab a bowl right here. I'm going to, and I'm going to take the sauce out as well. Another rule of thumb I have, if I'm heating something, a sauce, or if I'm cooking, for instance, mushrooms, and I want to keep the liquid in the pan, I take everything out of the pan because you have a good chance, even if you put a lid on, the food's out there has a chance of absorbing the liquid if you want to save liquid, or having it evaporate. Take it all out of the pan, and you'll have the amount of liquid that you want. And another rule of thumb is the second side always cooks faster than the first. Look at that. I've got nice browning there. So I'm just going to see how this is looking here. Oh, actually, no, I want to put the sauce on. So I'm going to, now this is the marinade. And turn the heat off. I think that temperature is fine. And again, I'm not looking for the tofu to be super dry at this point. So I'm going to work quickly here so I don't lose a lot of the liquid. And again, I just don't want all the liquid to evaporate. Actually, I'll use the bigger one here. Come on. And so now not only is this brown, but it's nice and moist from the liquid. Out will come the liquid. Again, I don't have a ton there, but that's fine because also I have, it's been absorbed even that quickly by some of the tofu here. So let me swing the camera back around.
So, Bill, just to double check, so we want some of that liquid to reserve for use to later. So that's why we want to be mindful of
Absolutely
that particular step.
That's exactly. It's completely optional, but I like the idea of drizzling a little bit, make it a little bit more juicier of a sandwich. I'm not looking for all kinds of liquid to come flying out of the sandwich, but again, a little more moisture on there, I think is a good thing. I'm just going to pop the skillet in here. So it's time now to start some assembling. But first, let's see how the pickled vegetables are doing. That's nice. Oh, it's got a nice bite to it. Getting the vinegar. That's good. So now let's start assembling. And I have a baguette here. I want to take one ingredient out of the fridge. I've been leaving it here intentionally. And this is the ingredient I was talking about. I'm putting mayonnaise on here. Traditionally, mayonnaise is egg, oil, maybe a little dry mustard. And so if you want to make this completely vegan, you've got a whole world of vegan mayonnaises that you can go with. So by using the regular mayonnaise, it's vegetarian. There are soy-based mayonnaise. I've tried looking for it. The supermarkets never seem to have it. For my Zoom classes, people have been telling me that Hellmann's mayonnaise has a vegan mayonnaise, and I'm dying to try it just to see how it is. So, and that's all you need to do to turn this from vegetarian to completely vegan. So, actually, one thing just to kind of jump sideways for a moment, when I was writing my knife skills book, I came to this thought that people need at minimum 2 knives in their repertoire, but ideally 4.5 knives. And the 2 knives I always say are the 10-inch, not an 8, but a 10-inch chef's knife, and a paring knife. These 2 knives will take care of just about anything. But I do suggest 4.5 knives. So the third knife would be a utility knife. Looks like a chef's knife. It's about 6 inches long. It's for the closer work that you do with the tip of the knife, cutting the florets off of cauliflower or broccoli. And you can do it with a chef's knife, but you don't have as much control this far away if you're just using this part of the knife. So that would be knife number 3. But what I'm about to use now is knife number 4, a serrated knife. It's for breads. It's for taking the skin off of melon, the rind off of watermelon, melons, and cutting, slicing tomatoes. And I recommend getting an offset handle one. Believe me, I don't sell knives, but if I did, I would sell an offset handle knife. Because with a straight knife, and they're perfectly fine, you end up hitting your knuckles. Whereas have an offset handle like that, see, it looks a little cockeyed like that, you don't hit your knuckles. So I said 4.5 knives. The half knife, I used it earlier. I consider the bench scraper so valuable, I call this the half knife. So those, to me, those are the ones you want to have. And if budget is an issue, which it is for everybody, I would suggest putting the vast majority of what you're spending into a chef's knife. And the other ones can be much cheaper knives. You don't have to get top of the line, go crazy with that. So that's what I do. So the offset handle serrated bread knife. So I think I'll do a sandwich about that big. Now, if I were doing a production of this, and I have done this, do a whole bunch of these, I would slice the baguette up all the whole length of it, but don't cut it all the way through. Just I'm about to do that, and then open it up, and then just make a whole bunch of them, and then slice the sizes that you need. So in this case, I'm just going to make the one, and I want to be very careful because this baguette is a little firmer. And I thought this part through, I would have warmed this up beforehand, but I didn't turn on my oven. So just open this up again, and say you cut it all the way through, it's not the end of the world. So now I've got the baguette there. I've got my mayonnaise. And it's funny when you think about going with a mayonnaise on a Southeast Asian sandwich, but again, the French influence. So put the mayonnaise on there. Oh, you know something? I want to take this moment to slice up some cucumber because that's going on there as well. So, yes.
I was just gonna say that explains it. When I was looking at this recipe, Bill, and I said mayonnaise, like where does that fit into the picture?
I know.
But that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
But the thing about using mayonnaise on this, and it seems almost counterintuitive, but it does work well, is you've got some zippy flavors in there, and it almost cools things down because you've got the marinade if you choose to use it, you've got the pickled vegetables. Also, if you want, and this is very common, finish up with a little hot sauce, whether it be sriracha or a few shakes of Tabasco. So you've got a bunch of zippy things going on there. And even though the tofu is a nice mouthfeel, it's not a soft thing. I mean, it's not I'm going to use the word refreshing. It's not a palate cleansing thing. So by having cucumber and some lettuce in there, I'm even putting some scallions on. So you have all kinds of things happening. So that's why it seems so counterintuitive. I agree with you. So let me grab a little cucumber here. And again, you can cut this any way you want. I'm just going to be doing, actually, I'll do some slices like I did for the carrots. So again, you can make them, on the thinner side. I'll put that there.
And would you pickle the cucumber, or would you just keep it fresh?
I'm going to keep it fresh because it's funny when I pickle cucumbers. Usually takes a couple of hours at least for the flavors to absorb. And then you chill them. So I don't know I'm sure they would be fine, but I like the freshness of them.
Oh,
I was just
sure.
thinking out loud. Oh, you can absolutely go with pickled cucumbers on here. So I've got my sliced cucumber here, and this again, the bench scraper always comes in handy. So now I'm ready to start assembling. So I've got the sandwich, I've got the mayonnaise already on here. Now I'm going to take a couple of pieces of tofu. I'm going to do it up here in the corner only because I'm using the center board. This is why I want to cut it on the diagonal. So as you can see, it's you know, all nice and wide in the middle, because I think it fits on the sandwich so much better. You can overlap it if need be. If, in this case, the bread is wide enough. Sometimes it's not wide enough. And let me just put it on that way. So now I've got the tofu there ready to go. And now I'm just going to start layering other things on here. I've got the mayonnaise. I'm going to finish it off with the lettuce. Just grab some really great looking lettuce there. Go with that big piece. I've got my cucumber here. And a couple of bits of scallion again. I'm putting green onion on here, putting the scallion on. I've got the lettuce on there. There's just all kinds of things happening. Oh, I forgot, I meant to put my pickled vegetables on. For some reason, I like having them close to the tofu.
When you have a moment, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about how you prep the scallions? Because I noticed that you had these really long, thin bits of stalk to match the julienne cucumber. Is that what you did?
That's how they came from the store.
Oh,
So
you just chopped it.
Actually, I just pulled it here. Let me show you. Actually, these were just, I didn't do anything to these, much to my disappointment. I like a thicker one. This is the entire scallion. So I'm just plucking the end off if you want. And so that's why it's, even if this were thicker, I kind of like the idea of putting a whole piece of scallion on. You could chop it up and put scallion pieces on, but eating a whole piece of scallion, I kind of like it. So,
Excellent.
Scallions are amazing. I'm sorry, Bill. I just I had a quick note. I was wondering. So there's no heating or toasting of the baguette?
Yes and no. If you have a really nice, great, fresh baguette, just dive right into it. This one I meant to warm it up just to kind of give it a little more softness to it, and I forgot to do that beforehand. I forgot to preheat the oven. Otherwise, I would have thrown it in while we're talking, and even just 10 minutes. But here's the thing. I'm glad you asked me that, Matt, because a lot of us like a really nice, crusty, thick crust, often baguette. I don't like that with sandwiches because they end up, the sandwich just ends up exploding, almost like a bagel sandwich. Nothing against bagels, but I don't think it's ideal for a sandwich. So just kind of thinking how you want the whole presentation to be, because also it'd be really so disappointing to go through all of this and have, you know, your guest or family bite into that first bite and they're wearing it. So have some softness to it. Even if it's a day old baguette and you pop it in the oven just to kind of firm it up a little bit, that's fine. So, or even a softer roll would be fine. So there's not a hard and fast rule. Just, you know, it's just kind of make sure it's something that, hate to say that's edible, but, you know, literally that it can be eaten. So in this case, I've got some sriracha type. There's so many great local srirachas, or Tabasco, or not. So here you see, there's all kinds of hot stuff going on here. Finish it off with the lettuce. And here you have it. You've got the vegetarian Bahn Mi. Now let me just kind of plate this up. And
we're coming over. So you can continue, you can slice the other.
yeah. Gee, so I've got this, and actually just to kind of garnish the plate a little bit. And actually this is something else that I can't remember who showed me this. It used to be when I wanted to do apple slices. I like having, you know, fresh fruit with my sandwiches. Is you kind of cut it in quarters and dig out the core. And again, with the utility knife, is just kind of to get your slices. In this case, I intentionally went a little deeper just so you can see I got a little seed in there. Not a big deal. I'll show you what to do about that. But to get your slices, just cut it that way. And now it's faster than trying to cleverly take out the seeds. Now, say you cut in too close and you get the seeds like that, no big deal. Just kind of keep cutting it, your slices that way. And if you need to dig them out, fine. But it's so much faster and easier than just trying to cleverly quarter an apple and then dig out big sections of seeds. So I've got the apple bits there. And because it's a sandwich, I made a special purchase of can of a sandwich without potato chips.
Oh,
And
wow.
voila, we have a Bahn Mi sandwich.
That looks glorious. You definitely know how to. Wow.
Thank you. So there it is, and it's easy to eat, really good to eat, and there's so much zip. Oh, it's funny here. I've talked so much. I never did put on the a little bit of sauce to drizzle on. Let me do that. And again, completely optional, but I'm just gonna get just a bit. You're not looking to drown it. You're not looking to wear it, and there we have. Oh, let me hold that up. The Bahn Mi sandwich.
Oh, amazing. We're thrilled. So many comments about just the beautiful presentation and just about how good that tofu looked. Some of us are saying that it might not even make it into the sandwich. We're just gonna eat it with the vegetables.
It really is quick, good, and easy that way. Yeah. Yeah. So what else can I tell you? Oh, so let me just actually walk you through just a couple other parts of it. I know we've got just a few minutes left, but again, it's such a flexible recipe. Say you don't have 5 spice powder and you want to make this in the morning with the ingredients you have there. It's going to be terrific. Don't worry about a change of ingredient here, change of ingredient there. The key things are getting a nice sauce to marinate the tofu in. Marinating your vegetables. If you don't have daikon, as I said, it's not even the recipe. Just go with carrots. It's fine. It's all going to work because you have a lot of zippy and some mild flavors there, which just all meld together. It's not just hurt your head hot, and it's not mild. Where's the spice? It's got both. It really does cover everything.
We're so grateful. This was, I mean, I did not expect to learn so much from you just about, using kitchen tools. And I pride myself on making a lot of things from scratch, but I was thinking along the way, like, we should just have you teach a knife skills class or something.
Actually, I'm doing a knife skills class for the, I'm blanking on the a library in Eastern Mass. I'm doing a Zoom one March 3rd. But it's funny, I was thinking about that class. I'm making chicken soup. So all the preparations for doing the soup to go beforehand. But I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the town. But I was thinking this could be a knife skills class. Again, just showing all these different things that knife skills doesn't have to be a meat thing or whatnot. So it's because to me, everything is technique. Because you can get recipes a lot of places, but it's the techniques and how you're going to help make this work. Because I could say, oh, just use a mandolin to slice your vegetables really thinly. Not everybody has one. So how can you make this work? And that's what I love about doing the Zooms and just with cooking. It's all fun and it's all technique for me.
Thank you so much for teaching and also for sharing this really wonderful recipes with us. So Matt shared the link to this collection of recipes that I pulled from Bill's website, which some of you are familiar with Bill who are with us this evening are just commenting and encouraging others to try. So please be sure to do that. And that collection of recipes that I put together as a PDF, I will email to everyone who registered for the class. That email will go out tomorrow. And Bill, I was just going to ask you real quick if there is, when I talked to you about this class last week, you were really excited about one specific recipe. The crispy tofu. Would you like to just share a few comments about that particular one?
Yes, I would. But before I do that, I just want to thank you, thank Matt, thank Natasha, Trevor, everybody. Working with you has been terrific. I love going into, I haven't been to the East Hampton yet, still trying to go because I love Captain Jack's anyway, and I love you folks, but I love going into River Valley. everybody's always terrific there working with you. And Matt, both of you in particular, has just been so easy. So thank you for doing all this for tonight's Zoom. So I appreciate that. The second thing to answer your question is a suggestion that came up in a class just a couple of weeks ago. And I made this recipe, okay, maybe it's 3 weeks ago. I made this a week or so ago. Was for crispy tofu. And they mentioned that there's an article by Melissa Clark in the New York Times of making crispy tofu. And to me, crispy tofu has always been kind of the holy grail of these things. And everybody says you have to deep fry it. Well, I'm not going to be deep frying it in my home. I mean, just people generally don't do that. So she had a recipe. It was a December article. People want to go back and search for it. And so I took that technique. And so the technique is really taking a tablespoon of cornstarch, tablespoon of oil. In my case, I use canola oil, mixing it all together, and then putting your cubed tofu in here. I'll tell you about the cubed tofu, and then popping it in the oven at 400 degrees. It takes 20 or 30 minutes. You turn it over a couple times. It's brown and it's crispy. It's got a nice crunch to it. And so what I did was I built I took three components to build the recipe. There's a peanut sauce that I had with it. It's a Martha Stewart fast peanut sauce. I usually do a longer, a little bit more complicated. This is a very fast peanut sauce. So I combined the crispy tofu technique. I combined the recipe for that very fast peanut sauce with mixed vegetables. And so starting while the tofu is in the oven cooking, mix up the peanut sauce. It's as fast as mixing the ingredients together. Just heating them up for 5 minutes. That's done. That's the peanut sauce. And then start sauteing the vegetables in a wok or a large skillet and combining it all. And boom, you have a great crispy tofu and peanut sauce with vegetables recipe. I was so taken aback, but again, it was a suggestion I never would have known. And I like looking at Melissa Clark, reading Melissa Clark's articles, but I missed it. So again, it's the give and take that I learned from folks. Everybody learns, but I learned from folks. So these two tofu techniques, the one that I did tonight, and that crispy tofu. So there's so many things you can do, and tofu has come so far. I mean, I like to joke. I used to make fun of tofu all the time until I started cooking with it more and more, and I thought, there's something to this. And again, to get these techniques to go, all right, we could really make more of this. I'm not trying to imitate meat with this, but make tofu as good, as appealing, and as good a mouthfeel and all of that as possible. And so it's been fun. So again, I'm hearing from other people, hey, you should try this, or look at, or see if you can tweak this technique. And that's where that came from. So I enjoyed talking with you and Matt about that last week. And it's a keeper. And so people at the Zooms come back, say, I made it that night or last night, and often they say it's a keeper. So I'm glad you mentioned that recipe. It was a good one.
Oh, for sure. When I shared the handout that I prepared with the marketing team, everybody picked the recipe out, like without, out of the 7 pages.
Yeah.
And several of us are planning to try that this weekend. If we'll have to figure out whether the sandwich will go first or the crispy tofu. I'm not sure, but and at that time, little did you know that we would design a whole class just for you for cooking tofu as you were.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's funny that it worked out that way, and I appreciate that. So thank you. It's just funny how it all came about. And again, just from the Zooms I've been doing, my wife and I do. She's the executive producer, and she runs all the background stuff, and she voices the questions from the chat. And looking back, I didn't realize until talking to you how many tofu recipes we had done. So I'm glad that I can mix meat and dairy and vegan and vegetarian tofu recipes, and not just tofu recipes, in with the Zooms, because I've learned a lot and I've picked up new recipes. So all in all, it's fun.
Oh, it is certainly. And we encourage everyone to hop online tomorrow, or it's Friday evening at 5. You can spend more time with Bill and check the recipe that he'll be making, or maybe you can just tell us real quick what that's going to be. And every week, Wednesday and Friday, then Bill will be back with us on April 7th on a Thursday. And you can spend some more time learning. We'll let you know what that's going to be.
Yeah, yep.
What are you cooking tomorrow, Bill?
Tomorrow I am doing a shortbread cookies with a chocolate drizzle.
Whoa.
So
Well,
it's,
that sounds fabulous. Good shortbread. It's one of those things that you need only just very few ingredients, but you start with good ingredients, I bet it's, and know how to handle them.
yeah.
Wow.
And again, that was a client, from my personal chefing, a client had asked me for those. I thought, well, I haven't made those in a million years. And the recipe comes from King Arthur flour. So many of the recipes I've made or I've tweaked over the years, or I've taken somebody else, or I've created completely. But when there's a recipe that is just perfect, like the King Arthur shortbread recipe, and a couple of things I do slightly different than technique, I mean, minorly different, but and I talk about in the Zoom. It's shortbread is perfection, so it's great fun.
Real quick, I wanted to point out that I did notice, Bill, that your book Knife Skills
Yes.
is available digitally. I'm not sure if it's still in print or not, but
It should, last I heard it was in print. That's the oldest of my books. It's probably about 6 years ago now, from Story Publishing. They're actually in North Adams, but there is a Kindle version of at least that one. Because the other ones that I did were making caramels, chocolate candies, and making and using vinegar. So, but the Knife Skills one, I shouldn't say this about the other 3 books, but it's my favorite. So I believe that is still available.
great.
Oh, wow. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to close and call it a night. And we so appreciate all of you for being here. And thank you so much for Matt for helping everybody navigate their webinar experience this evening, and for attending to everyone. Thank you so much, Bill, for being with us. This was so much fun, so exciting. We learned a ton. And really looking forward to spending time with you again in April. And we'll check in your regular classes too.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening.